History teaches us that every great empire leaves visible marks behind. Rome built roads, Britain ruled the oceans, Spain expanded across continents. Their power could be measured by territory. Their influence could be seen on maps. The modern world tells a very different story. The most influential power today is no longer defined by the amount of land it controls. It is defined by the number of systems the world depends upon. Every day, billions of people interact with American architecture without consciously realizing it. International trade is largely priced in dollars. Aircraft navigate using GPS. Businesses operate on cloud platforms. Global capital flows through financial markets. Smartphones rely on technologies developed through decades of American innovation. Each system appears independent. Together, they form something much larger, an invisible architecture supporting modern civilization. This is why American influence extends far beyond its borders, not because every nation follows American politics, but because much of the world relies on systems America helped design. The greatest transformation in global power was not the expansion of territory, it was the expansion of infrastructure. Because once a civilization begins depending on your systems, your influence no longer needs to be imposed. It becomes part of everyday life.
For most of history, great power is expanded by controlling territory. Land created wealth. Resources created influence. Military strength protected both. The 20th century changed that equation. After the Second World War, the United States inherited something unprecedented. Not simply the world's strongest economy, but the opportunity to redesign the architecture of the global system. Instead of conquering nations, America began building institutions. Instead of occupying markets, it established standards. Instead of controlling every transaction, it created the infrastructure through which transactions could move. The dollar became the foundation of international trade. Wall Street evolved into the world's largest capital market. American universities attracted global talent. Silicon Valley accelerated technological innovation. The internet connected billions. Together, these developments created something history had never seen before, a nation whose influence expanded because its systems became increasingly indispensable. This represented a fundamental shift in the nature of power. Military strength remained important. Economic growth remained essential. But the greatest advantage now belonged to those who designed the platforms, standards, and networks supporting everyone else. Once businesses, governments, and individuals adopted those systems, the architecture began reinforcing itself. Every new participant increased its value. Every new connection strengthened the network. Power was no longer measured only by what America owned. It was increasingly measured by what the rest of the world relied upon. That is the defining characteristic of modern global power. The strongest architecture is not the one that controls the most people. It is the one that becomes impossible to operate without.
Most people think the US dollar is simply America's currency. In reality, it functions as something much larger. It is one of the foundational systems supporting the global economy. Every day, trillions of dollars move through international markets. Oil is priced in dollars. Global commodities are traded in dollars. Governments hold dollar reserves. Corporations borrow in dollars. Investors measure risk against dollar-based assets. This creates an extraordinary network effect. The more participants use the system, the more valuable the system becomes. Over time, the dollar evolved beyond national borders. It became a common language for global commerce. A manufacturer in Asia, an energy producer in the Middle East, a bank in Europe, and an investor in South America may all operate under different governments, yet many still settle international business using the same financial architecture. That architecture creates predictability. Predictability creates confidence. Confidence attracts capital, and capital reinforces the system even further. This explains my financial influence extends far beyond economic size alone.
The nation operating the world's preferred financial infrastructure gains visibility into global capital flows, stronger financial markets, and greater resilience during periods of uncertainty. This is why the dollar is not merely a currency, it is infrastructure, and infrastructure creates a different kind of power. Unlike military power, it doesn't need to move across borders. It simply becomes the system the world chooses to use. Once that happens, influence no longer travels with armies, it travels with transactions. Financial systems were only one layer of American influence. A second architecture was quietly taking shape, not in Washington, but in Northern California. Silicon Valley did not simply build successful companies, it built the digital foundation of modern civilization. The smartphone became the world's primary computer. Cloud computing became the world's digital infrastructure. Search engines organized information. Operating systems connected billions of devices. Social platforms reshaped communication. Artificial intelligence began transforming decision-making. Each innovation solved a different problem. Together, they created a shared digital architecture used across the planet. The true advantage was never a single product, it was the ecosystem surrounding it. Developers built applications, businesses migrated to the cloud, universities produced talent, investors financed innovation, data accelerated improvement. Every new participant strengthened the entire network. This created a powerful cycle. Innovation attracted capital. Capital attracted talent. Talent created better technology. Better technology attracted even more users. Over time, Silicon Valley became more than a technology hub. It became the operating environment for the global digital economy. Today, millions of businesses run on platforms developed there. Governments depend on software created there. Startups launch using infrastructure hosted there. Artificial intelligence is being trained inside data centers located there. The world often sees famous companies. What it rarely sees is the architecture connecting them all. Because the greatest achievement of Silicon Valley was not inventing the next device, it was designing the digital systems upon which the next generation of civilization would be built.
Most people think the internet is a place, a website, an application, or simply Wi-Fi. In reality, the internet is an architecture built from thousands of independent systems working together. Submarine cables carry data across oceans. Internet exchange points connect national networks. Cloud data centers process billions of requests every second. Domain name systems translate websites into machine-readable addresses. Routing protocols determine the fastest path for every pocket of information. None of these systems exist in isolation. Each depends on another. Together, they create what billions of people simply call the internet. The United States played a unique role in shaping this architecture. Many of the foundational technologies were developed through American research institutions. Some of the earliest internet protocols emerged there. The largest cloud providers were built there. Many of today's most influential digital platforms still operate from there. This does not mean America controls every connection. The internet is far too decentralized for that. But it does mean that much of the world's digital economy was built upon foundations first established within the American technology ecosystem. That distinction matters, because the nation that helps define standards often shapes the direction of innovation. Every new application, every online business, every AI platform depends on infrastructure that already exists. This is how architectural influence grows, not by controlling every website, but by building the foundation that allows millions of websites to exist. The internet is often described as the greatest invention of the digital age. Perhaps a more accurate description is this: it is the largest system of interconnected systems humanity has ever created, and those who helped design its foundations helped shape the future of the modern world.
Every day, billions of people use GPS. Most believe it exists simply to provide directions, finding a restaurant, navigating a highway, tracking a delivery. Those are only the visible applications. The real architecture runs much deeper. GPS is not merely a navigation system, it is a global synchronization system. Every satellite continuously broadcasts an extremely precise timestamp. Receivers compare multiple signals to calculate location with remarkable accuracy. That same precision does something even more important. It synchronizes modern civilization. Financial markets rely on precise timing to record transactions. Telecommunication networks coordinate billions of connections every second. Power grids synchronize electricity across vast regions. Aircraft maintain safe separation in crowded airspace. Container ships navigate oceans with extraordinary precision. Even emerging autonomous systems depend on accurate positioning and timing. Without synchronization, these systems would gradually drift apart. Small timing errors would become larger ones. Communication would slow. Navigation would become unreliable. Financial records could lose consistency. The architecture would begin to lose coordination. This illustrates a fundamental principle of systemic power. The most valuable infrastructure is often invisible. People notice roads because they can see them. Few notice timing signals traveling silently through space. Yet those invisible signals quietly support transportation, communication, finance, logistics, and national infrastructure around the world. That is the evolution of modern influence. The greatest systems are no longer the ones people interact with directly. They are the ones enabling thousands of other systems to function together. Because when your infrastructure becomes the foundation for everyone else's infrastructure, your influence extends far beyond the technology itself. It becomes part of the architecture of civilization.
Innovation alone does not change the world. Ideas require capital. Factories require investment. Infrastructure requires financing. Technology requires patient investors willing to fund the future. This is where another layer of American architecture emerges. Wall Street is often viewed as a collection of banks and stock exchanges. In reality, it functions as one of the world's largest capital allocation systems. Every day, trillions of dollars move through its markets. Investors search for opportunity. Companies raise funding. Governments issue debt. Pension funds finance long-term growth. Venture capital backs the next generation of innovation. Each transaction appears independent. Together, they determine where global capital flows. Capital is more than money. It is a decision about the future. Every investment answers the same question. What should civilization build next? Artificial intelligence, semiconductors, cloud computing, biotechnology, renewable energy. The industries receiving capital today often become the industries shaping tomorrow. This creates an architectural advantage. The deepest capital markets do more than finance businesses. They accelerate entire ecosystems. Entrepreneurs gain access to funding. Researchers commercialize discoveries. Investors reinvest successful returns into new ideas. The cycle repeats. Faster, larger, more efficiently. Over time, the financial system becomes an innovation system. This is why influence is not determined only by how much wealth a nation creates. It is determined by how effectively that wealth is transformed into the next generation of infrastructure, technology, and industry. The world often sees billion-dollar companies. What it rarely sees is the capital architecture that allowed those companies to exist in the first place. Because before every global platform, before every technological breakthrough, and before every new industry, someone had to fund the future.
Every global system depends on one essential ingredient: common standards. Without them, modern civilization could not operate at scale. Imagine if every country used a different internet language, if every smartphone required a unique charging system, if every aircraft communicated using incompatible navigation protocols, or if every payment network followed different security rules. Global commerce would slow dramatically. Instead, billions of people interact through systems that speak the same language. Software follows common protocols. Financial institutions exchange standardized data. Shipping containers fit ports around the world. Cloud platforms communicate through shared technical frameworks. Digital devices connect using compatible technologies. Most people never notice these standards because successful standards are designed to disappear.
Their purpose is not to attract attention. Their purpose is to eliminate friction. This is where architecture becomes more influential than products. A product can dominate a market for a few years. A standard can shape an entire industry for decades. Once businesses invest in compatible infrastructure, changing systems becomes increasingly expensive. Developers build upon existing platforms. Manufacturers optimize around established technologies. Universities teach widely adopted frameworks. Entire ecosystems begin evolving in the same direction. This creates one of the most powerful network effects in modern civilization. The value no longer comes from a single invention. It comes from millions of organizations building upon the same foundation. That is why standards quietly become infrastructure, and infrastructure quietly becomes power. Because the future is rarely shaped by those who create the loudest innovation. It is often shaped by those who define the architecture that everyone else chooses to build upon.
Every powerful system eventually reaches a turning point. People stop thinking about who created it. They simply begin relying on it. This is where infrastructure becomes influence, not because users are forced to participate, but because participation becomes the most efficient choice. A company selects the largest cloud platform because its partners already use it. Developers build for the most widely adopted operating system because it reaches the largest audience. Investors trade in the deepest financial markets because liquidity attracts liquidity. Governments hold reserve assets where stability already exists. Each decision appears rational on its own. Together, they reinforce the same architecture. Economists describe this as a network effect. Architects might describe it differently. Every new connection strengthens the foundation supporting every existing connection. Over time, the system becomes increasingly difficult to replace. Not because alternatives don't exist, but because switching requires rebuilding an entire ecosystem. Software must be rewritten, infrastructure must be replaced, standards must be renegotiated, supply chains must be reorganized. The cost extends far beyond technology. It affects the entire architecture surrounding it. This explains why modern power looks so different from the past. Empires once defended borders. Today's system architects defend ecosystems. Their greatest advantage is not controlling individual products. It is operating platforms that millions of organizations have already integrated into their daily operations. That is the highest form of systemic influence. When dependence is no longer created by force, but by efficiency. Because the most resilient architecture is the one people continue choosing, even when they have other options. Looking at any one system tells only part of the story. The dollar, Wall Street, Silicon Valley, the internet, GPS, cloud computing. Individually, each appears to solve a different problem. Collectively, they solve a much larger one. They allow modern civilization to operate at planetary scale. Money moves across borders within seconds. Information reaches billions instantly. Aircraft navigate safely across continents. Businesses coordinate global supply chains. Artificial intelligence processes knowledge at unprecedented speed. These achievements were not created by a single invention. They emerged from layers of interconnected architecture built over decades. This is the defining characteristic of American global power. It is not based solely on military strength, nor is it explained only by economic size. Its greatest advantage lies in the systems supporting governments, businesses, institutions, and individuals around the world. The more these systems connect, the more valuable they become. The more valuable they become, the more difficult they are to replace. This is how modern influence evolves, not through visible control, but through invisible integration. History often remembers empires for the territory they conquered. The 21st century may remember them differently, by the architectures they built. Because the most enduring form of power is not the ability to command the world, it is the ability to build systems the world chooses to depend upon.
Modern civilization is not held together by borders alone. It is held together by systems. Some move capital, some move information, some move goods, others move trust itself. The nations that shape these systems often shape the future long before history recognizes it. Because beneath every global event, there is an architecture. Beneath every architecture, there is a system. And those who understand the systems begin to understand how the modern world truly works. This is LEXERA, decoding the architecture of modern civilization.